grateful for the opportunity to introduce our next speaker, Brad Cloepfil. It tickled me to find out that we have at least a couple of things in common. We are both Oregonians, and we both have degrees from the University of Oregon. But beyond that, he kind of leaves me in the dust. After earning his Bachelor of Architecture from U of O, Brad worked for offices in Los Angeles and Switzerland, and then he landed in New York, where he earned his advanced degree in architecture design from Columbia University Graduate School of Architecture, and that was in 1985. Oregon was very lucky to have Brad return to his hometown of Portland in 1994, where he founded Allied Works Architecture, a world-renowned firm where designs are forged by defining elements of their mission. In 2003, he opened a New York City office. While known foremost for their cultural projects such as the Pacific Northwest College of Art in Portland, Allied Works also focuses on the design of creative workspaces and residences. To give you an idea of the scale of the projects that Brad and his firm work on, here is a short sample from a really long list, some of which I believe you will recognize. Widening Kennedy Building in downtown Portland in the Pearl District, which has become a benchmark for adaptive reuse and workspace architecture. The Museum of Arts and Design in New York. The Seattle Art Museum. Pixar's Brooklyn Building in Emory, California. And the just unveiled National Music Center in Calgary, up in Canada. Two of my personal favorites are the Sokol Blosser Winery and the amazing Caldera Art Center out at Blue Lake here in Central Oregon. Brad's also working on a private residence here in Bend. He's won numerous architecture awards throughout his career, such as the Progressive Architecture Award from Architect Magazine in 2014, and several honors from the American Institute of Architects. Most recently, and literally recently, like in the last few days, Brad and his firm have been chosen as finalists to design, quote, a new groundbreaking art school that will redefine 21st century arts education, end quote. This is a chance for Brad and his team to design a new campus that aims to unify the California College of Arts campuses in Oakland and San Francisco. Additionally, in early October, Allied Works was shortlisted as one of 5 finalists to compete for the design of a $55 to $65 million project. It's a museum expansion at the Arkansas Art Center in Little Rock. We are thrilled that Brad could find time to come and be with us today. So please join me in giving Brad a warm Central Oregon welcome to the stage of Bend Design.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't been in downtown Bend in 20 years. And I drove in last night, and I had no idea where I was. So I've been going through this process of reacquainting myself with this city and watching you all gather and watching the speakers. I just had this sense, and you're going to think I'm pandering, but it's true. I was talking to John about this. I just have this sense that this is the place. Yeah, there's something going on here. I mean, there's just it's the future. You know, I think it's the future of Oregon. I really believe that. I mean, John and I will discuss this and other things maybe in a little bit. But so anyway, thrilled to be here. Just really exciting to get to know Bend again and a little bit of what's happening here. I mean, I don't think there's anything like this happening in Portland, right? So it's here. It's really cool. Anyway, I'm inspired. So what I'll talk about, it's amazing. Wait, wherever the thing is. Okay. So it's amazing to listen to the first 2 speakers because it helps me contextualize even more what I do. You see people designing whole education experiences and rethinking critical cultural institutions and design strategies for cultural change and social change. And I'm just an architect. And in some ways, I've spent my career narrowing my discipline to really decide and really try to understand what architecture can offer. In today's culture, It's interesting, rather than these wonderful applied design strategies, in today's culture, in architecture, design is a little bit of the enemy. I mean, architecture, you look at the sort of spectacle architecture that's being done today, you see it in Bend, you see it in every city where people just try to put more design into commodifying a building to sell their brand and sell their image. And I've been spending most of my career doing as little design as possible and continuing in that pursuit. And we can talk about what that means, but I'm really serious about it. We do try to do as little design as possible in our pursuit. So, and I think it's because my practice, it started because I started in architecture because I was afraid to be an artist. That's really what it came down to. But I think I took that spirit of inquiry into the work we do and the way we work. And so I'll talk about that practice. I'll talk about this inquiry that we do at Allied Works. And it's really all about, it's searching for what architecture as a specific creative act, it's searching for what architecture can offer. Many times we get projects where we even understand architecture is not the answer. They think they want a building, but they don't really need a building. It's hard to tell people that when they're hiring an architect, you might imagine. But it's true more often than not. And so the more we do this, the more I try to discern and distinguish what architecture really has to say, how it can contribute to an understanding of an institution, of a landscape, of a dwelling even, really, what architecture can elevate and reveal. And to do that, I look at lots of things. I look at landscape a lot, I think having to do with being from Oregon. I love this image on the lower right where the path of a river changed and one species of tree grows in that riverbed. And I always want my architecture to somehow be that specific to a place. And the upper slide is one of my favorite slides, a Native American bridge. You can imagine the trial and error to establish that span. But I look at everything I can for inspiration, and I think coming from an art background, much of my inspiration comes from artists, and I've had the good fortune to do a number of art museums, work with a number of artists individually, and so the ways of making and thinking and marking have had a profound influence on me, and then conversations with people like Richard Serra, who cited that piece next to the first museum I did in St. Louis, the Contemporary Art Museum. Anne Hamilton, I've had a chance to work with a couple times. Having conversations with artists about the ideas and inquiries and the discipline of their making has inspired me and inspired me to the commonalities of a lot of what we do and the kind of search to elevate understanding and insight. And in all of this, by the way, is an installation on a house that we designed in Dutchess County, New York, where Doug Agan projected the landscape back on the house, which was a concept that began in the discussion of the house itself and what I was trying to do in the architecture. And he sort of took it and extended the conversation in his art. And I loved that kind of collaboration where it's not blurring the boundaries as much as it is elevating the distinct disciplines and merging those two. And it's been something that's guided the work forever. But so with architecture, and again in this culture of commodity and design commodity, I've spent a lot of time thinking what architecture specifically can offer. What it offers, again, modeling a lot of what we do on a lot of art practices, Richard Serra's in this particular case. But what architecture can offer, and it's taken me a long time to have the courage to even say this, but what architecture can offer is a sense of wonder. I think the language of architecture, the best architecture that we experience, whether it's a beautiful library or a Gothic cathedral or anything that you've found, architectural ruins in Rome, whatever it is, but it inspires that sense of wonder, and I think it's one of the few disciplines, design disciplines, that has that ability. So in our search, we try to find where that wonder is, what it can serve, what it can particularly reveal about a certain problem. And so we begin in the process of sort of visual inquiry. Architecture is a visual discipline. It's actually a spatial discipline more in its own manifestation. But we look at things, everything we possibly can do. This was starting with the Clyfford Still Museum, thinking about his paintings, thinking about the landscape and the light, looking at things that we thought inspired him and his work. We looked at the particular landscapes that he painted and lived in, thought about the qualities of light that inspired his work, thought about the city of Denver, where the museum is located, and which, by the way, Denver, with all of its buildings that use mountain metaphors, Denver's a prairie city. So, it's a surprise. You guys, it's in the prairie. There's mountains over there, though. Anyway, so looking at the nature of the prairie and how the light strikes the surface of the prairie, and understanding that the architecture in this particular case is the bridge between the light and the earth, with the responsibility to make a domain and a place to allow us to see the work of a particular, very powerful individual artist. So looking at that inspiration, starting with these marks on the page, these I did before we even went to the interview when I first saw the site, was this idea of bringing shafts of light down into the earth and marking the earth and bringing the building to the earth, in contrast to a lot of things around it. This was a concept model. This is the first concept model that we did, and it is, I don't have a pointer thingy, but so the black charcoal is really the earth, the shafts of light are these white boxes, and this stippled thing on the left was about diffusing light, coming directly from some of those photo inspirations that you saw. But anyway, we took this to the interview, and of course people go, what the hell is that? Is this, people are so used to architects showing them computer images and your building's going to look like this, and they say, sure, I'll take that, give me 3, I'll take a discount. And so they say, well, is it going to look like that? And we say, no, it's not going to look like that. We have no idea what it's going to look like. But this is that's the idea. This, basically what we're trying to show is that's the pursuit, right? We want the building to manifest those qualities, to feel like it's of the earth, to bring the light down, to mediate those two things, and then begin in a process of refinement. Start to look at structure and walls, and then check back in. This is a model we did halfway through, because the building, what that concept was, that's, speaking of mountain metaphors, that's the Libeskind Denver Art Museum. I don't know if you guys have been there, that's above or right next to that. And so with that building, doing whatever evocation it's trying to do, and being very much the object building, I wanted this building to be of the earth. And like I said, and so I wanted to bury it not in the earth, but in a grove of trees, so that you would actually never even see the facade. My dream was you'd never see the facade of the building. You would just discover it through the trees. That you would sort of come under the canopy of trees and walk into the building. And so this was halfway through, and I was just trying to pound home to the team and the landscape architects that we wanted the building to start at the curb, that when you step onto the site, you would be in the building itself. And then it became a thinking of how I was in my hotel room this morning, and I counted 7 materials in the bathroom, wall materials, surface materials. I'll let you reflect on that yourselves, but these are my peers. So more is more, I guess, is really what it's about. So this is a very small building, about 30,000 square feet for a single artist, and I wanted it to be one thing. So this artist, ceramic artist, Eva Hild, I don't know if you've seen it, there are these very large porcelain sculptures. They're unbelievable. So I wanted the building to have that sense of discovery, that sense of oneness, of continuity, that you really felt it was, again, one thing. So we started on a course of sketches, models, first in cardboard, endless iterations. Iterations are a tremendous part of what we do in just the testing of things. So these are all structural walls that begin to define rooms. And it's a study of incompleteness, that the walls are all structural and bearing, but yet they're always partly open and partly closed, which then led to about 150 of these cardboard models. And these are all working with structural engineers at the same time, because this isn't just capricious composition. This is about the engineering qualities of the building, but also trying to scale and proportion galleries, which then led back to the quality of light. So this process, goes through like charcoal, photographs, compressed charcoal and resin models, routed out stumps, cardboard models, and then of course digital modeling. And it for us, it's the kind of there's a sort of urgency in the pursuit to find the idea. And like I said, so we'll use any material we can possibly, any technology we can possibly find, whatever it is, to sort of follow the thread. I love the David Lynch fish thing, because it is so true. And so these were looking for a way of bringing the light into the building. And then using very, very sophisticated, I wish I had more time. The digital light modeling that you can do now, the light data from any sky anywhere in the world now is a known thing. So working with the daylight engineers, in this case structural engineers, we can predict the quality of light on a surface on November 27th, to within, it's incredible. So, and this is the final, and you see the sense of the space moving over the walls, through the opening, around the walls, and the entire building is one material. It's all site cast concrete, including that light filter on the top. Oh, this is just a little detail too. This is another comment. Concrete, so I wanted to not control the concrete. I could have done the whole 30 minutes on this building, actually. So I didn't want the pattern or the design of the pattern of the formwork of the concrete to take away from the work, the art. Everything here is really in service of Clyfford Still Museum's art. So we designed a formwork system that would break off, so we couldn't really control the outcome. We looked at all kinds of crazy. We looked at doing a formwork of shag carpet. I'm actually serious about that, that would move and swirl and do crazy things. We looked at adding glass. We looked at all these stuff, and of course none of it which we could afford, but ended up with just, and then trying to get the craftsmen, the builders, to actually break the building. You can imagine they were terrified. They were terrified, and we kept saying, it's fine, just rip that stuff off and let it break off. Anyway, that's that outcome. So the National Music Center, another project, this just opened recently. Actually, I have to go up there next week for press stuff. So we got to, and this is really exciting, we got to invent an institution. They did a competition announcement for this project in Calgary, National Music Center Canada. We Googled it, and there was nothing. And we thought it was like a joke, like some kind of ruse, but there was no, they invented this institution with this competition. So we got to not only create the architecture, but work with the director and the staff to create the programming, and sort of, so the conception of the whole thing was one piece. It was so exciting. But began then with that landscape of the northern plains. This is very interesting. The hoodoos of southern Alberta were one of the first things Clyfford Still painted when he grew up in North Dakota. And so our career is sort of following Clyfford Still in some way there. But there are these amazing landscape forms and the grain elevators, and then the beauty of the instruments, the form of the instruments themselves. And the conception of this as a music center was that it'll be recording, performance, education, exhibition. There's broadcast studios. There's kind of everything imaginable. So this concept sketch was this idea of these resonant vessels, as I called them, that you could play these vessels. I had just seen David Burns playing the building on the pier in New York, and the idea that an institution could really play the building in any way it wants was the driving force. So these were the sketches, again, before the interview. So then I wanted to do a model to take to the interview. After, the success, we've been doing these concept models for ourselves for a very, very long time, and we never showed them to clients because, what are you going to tell a client that is? Like, what the hell? And to us, these are very important things. This is a study on these vessels and the difference between the inside life and the outside life and how those things interface at the surface. But we had this crazy idea. So I'll back up. So we did these things, and I realized there's no way in hell we can take this. We'll never win the project if we show them these things, right? Sure, I'll give you $100 million to do that, So, this is the problem with architecture between the idea and the representation. and that's a whole nother discussion. But so I had this idea. I said, we've got to do something. So I literally said, why can't we, cut up a musical instrument? Let's do this literally, and we'll cast it, and we'll mill it. And we have this big shop in the basement of Allied Works in Portland. And these young, earnest architecture interns took me literally, went out to Goodwill, bought a trombone, and brought the first piece. It's the one with the two little holes up, and I couldn't believe it. So this was the model that we took again, to this interview. And everybody else is doing computer renderings and, architectural models. How can you have a building design when you haven't even gotten the project yet? So to us, this is these are aspirational, these models too. They're evocations of what's possible, we hope. They're aspirations of, if the architecture could only be remotely as powerful as these things. And that's what's so fantastic about using these different mediums, these different scales, is you can concentrate the ideas. You can find a way, that's what we're trying to do. And you can isolate elements of sometimes structural ideas, sometimes program ideas, and a lot of times just poetic inspiration, like the intangible that we're searching to create, getting back to that sense of wonder. So we won the competition, and I didn't want the building to be so separate. Again, I wanted it to feel like one institution. And I knew one of the really important things about this was the gaps between. So if you go into a performance or a gallery, you stepped out into silence. That was the fundamental precept of this. And when you step into silence, you connect back to the landscape, you see, then you go into another intense experience. But I wanted it to be bound together. So I did the sketch after we won the competition, right? Sort of taking those vessels and thinking of ways for them to touch and the space to interweave, and these are the things that I give my staff and send them, yeah. It's like, good luck with that. So then we don't even know, really, it was like, we don't even know what that means, right? So we made paper models and started tearing them and pinning them and just trying to figure out what the hell, what is that? Or does it even work? I have no idea, right? It's just, so then we started doing, then it was too hard to do the paper models and the clips. We had staples and glue and all this stuff. So then we started doing digital modeling and trying to think of how these things would interweave and what the quality would be. Then we did, this you'd think this is CNC milled, but of course no, this is individually laser cut planks that we laminated. But anyway, the building itself then evolved. We're skipping, about 2 years of work. And this is the other part about architecture, is it just takes forever, right? I mean, all these great design disciplines that get to do these incredibly innovative things and cycle through them and do more, and we work on these projects. This project took 8 years to build. It's crazy. But so we ended up with the building being 2 different systems. Still, you see the legacy of the towers, but on the left, there's a series of towers that are rectangles at the top, change geometry, touch at the bottom, and lift up to create a large unified lobby volume. The other one is a series of volumes that are rectangular at the bottom, rise 5 floors, touch at the top to suspend the bridge over the street, and then suspend the performance space on the right. And those 2 things interlock in space, and it creates something else. So the inner world, so then we also worked with this porcelain company. This was a historic jazz club, which is a piece of their collection that was on the original site, which is why they bought this land. And we had to keep that as a kind of first piece of the collection. And they've restored it to be a jazz and blues club. But so we worked with this 500-year-old porcelain company and developed 2 different glazes, which you can kind of see change color throughout the thing. The inner glaze is a platinum glaze, and the orthogonal surfaces is a kind of hematite slate glaze. But so we have so much fun and working with this company. It took us 3 years, because exterior glazes have acids and all this crazy stuff, so it's really hard, but it was unbelievably fun. But you can see these things move and interlock. And then when you're inside, you're just in this world. You're just held in this world of music. And that's the lobby on the left, where those big transfer beams, you see one of the arcs there. It's 165-foot transfer beams. And you see up into that performance space with the glowy ceiling. That's the structure that's actually suspended. And then you move up these stairs that go between these two crazy structural worlds. And then the other idea that we had is that when the performance space with the blue chairs, the walls open and close, so you could literally play the building. You could have performances there that would go up into this labyrinthian space. And we worked with these very sophisticated concert acoustic engineers to design it's kind of impossible to do, but to try to design the acoustics of these interstitial spaces. So there you get a sense of that lobby. And then moving up through those, through those sort of canyons and chasms. And the goal is that you would be held in this world, detached, as much as you can still see back out to the city for orientation. You're sort of detached from what's around you. And then there's sort of people and music and glimpses of things around that kind of guide you to the building, and then hopefully and ideally create that sense of wonder. That's looking up from the lobby. It's hard, yeah. Sometime when you're in Calgary, you'll stop by. I'm running out of time. I'm really was going too slow, but. This is another project we're doing. It's the National Veterans Memorial Museum. We've done a lot of art museums. This is actually a really powerfully personal project to me. Something I'd never considered, never really thought about, this idea of service and sacrifice, and working on this project for the last 4 years, working with Ralph Applebaum, the exhibition designers. It's been an incredible thing. And it's in Columbus, Ohio. So I'll just be really quick. This is both a monument and a museum in a very large park. It's a very small building. So we conceived of this thing as an earthworks, as a kind of sanctuary that we lift up from the earth, right? Carve into the earth and lift up. There's a processional ramp. And then how to make the building itself, see that piece on my slides are a little messed up here. The sort of torn piece of wood, how the building binds itself back to the earth, creates a series of boundaries and walls that you move further and further inside. We came up with this crazy concrete structure, and it's 3 slightly off-centered rings of structure that interweave, and these are enormous 180-foot spans of sort of cantilevered arches. These 2 projects, this and the National Music Center, have almost killed us. It's like just because you can conceive it and just because you can engineer it, because we've been working with the same engineering consultants. It's so much about the creative evolution of our staff and the engineers that we work with, and the ability to sort of propose something with the knowledge that you actually do know that it's possible. But what we encountered in the beginning of this project is no one wanted to build it. It was really crazy. They could make a lot of money, the builders, doing concrete frames out in the suburbs, and no one would bid it. It was really this crazy thing. So, and you can see why. What the hell? Who would, why would you want to build that? So this is across the river from downtown Columbus. The buildings behind don't exist. It's the kind of gateway piece to a new neighborhood. I'll just keep going. Anyway, working with Ralph Applebaum, this idea of service and sacrifice. It's been a very, very profound thing. And then there's the thing, the crazy thing under construction. It's a tapestry. This is what's amazing. This building there's 9 levels of reinforcing steel. In that we had to bring in small children to set the steel because they could get their hands in there. It's our part of the Employ the Children program. But anyway, you see the sort of spirit of this thing, and there in about 1.5 years, hopefully it'll look like that. So in the last few minutes. So those are 3 just sort of case studies in how we work. And this idea of finding the architecture again, in this kind of branded world of architectural imagery and starchitecture and all these things that they talk about in the press, and all these pieces of architecture that get imposed, victimizing cities all over the world, we try to find the architecture. I mean, we begin the project, we have no idea what we're doing. We certainly have a point of view. We care a lot about building and making and structure, but it's really in pursuit of that spirit of wonder, and also amplifying understanding. I think that's one of the things building, and I've learned this in the art museum projects. I didn't know this in the beginning, but the idea that a building, in the way it touches you, the way it opens you up, it can help amplify the work, whatever the work is, whether the work is a school. You all know, first of all, you all know how crappy most schools are, how terrible the architecture is. I don't know if you've had, any of you in recent years, some of you have gone through those schools. But then you go into a school that has amazing space, and it changes everything, right? It changes the whole conversation. So we try to find those things in all these projects, and we employ every medium possible. And so a couple of years ago, I just have to tell, this is funny. So we were in the finals for this arts building in Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz, at the edge of this meadow, against the redwoods, the ocean, beautiful thing. So we made a 1,000-foot-long porch structure at the head of this meadow, right? It was an incredible scheme. But we took that to the interview, and you wonder why we didn't get the project, right? A lot of these things are how not to get projects. Yeah. We have to learn, we're still learning which clients can go that way with you and which ones go, what the hell? So you're going to build a thread building for us, Because people believe what they see, rather than what it, to us, it was trying to do what it evokes. Anyway, another project for a museum that never happened in Wisconsin, where I was flying over Wisconsin, a lot of small farms, very beautiful aerial landscape. And this was on a very large site, so I wanted to recreate these different sort of native ecosystems of landscape and have the building gather them together in some way. And these light monitors then are porcelain. So all of these pieces are just a way of searching for, this was a museum in Switzerland. You can imagine showing that to the Swiss, right? Yeah. There's your museum. Yeah. But so we got asked to do a show, and I was thinking, the Casework show, it was in the Portland Art Museum last June and traveling elsewhere. We'd been working with all these directors and curators, and they said, these things, you have to show these things. And I kept saying, well, these things are not artifacts, they're process, for us. And they were all in basement and boxes and things, and the sketches are all over the place. And I think the point that I sort of started with, the idea that architecture right now is just so much about image. It's so much about image and commodity. That this idea of a pursuit of an idea or a poetic, or that you find the architecture together and that each project is fundamentally and powerfully different. This was a bronze model we did with some fabricators in Portland for a museum competition in Quebec. Anyway, trying to find those things and engage the client in this conversation. And obviously there's analytical drawings we do, there's a lot of factual stuff we do and a lot of really basic and good informational things, but this is what drives the work. This was a series of things we did. We got second for an edition to the Met about a year and a half ago. It's heartbreaking after a year of work. But these were all the sort of cycles looking for how the building on the left meets the park, and that's really what it was, and brings the park into the building. And then thinking even back to Clyfford Still with these shafts of light coming at these intersections, and it created a system of galleries where the light and the structure came through the building in the same way. And created some amazing galleries. But all of these pieces, all of these images, are just in the pursuit of some sense of understanding. And again, going back to my somewhat flippant comment about design, it's looking for something to serve, whether it's a spirit of it, which also includes a function of it, a nature of the structure, a nature of the materiality, and a kind of idealization of things, which then always become much more mediated. This is part of the problem for me. This was a concept model for the Sokolblosser winery. And, I want to build that, is what I really want to build. But I'm not sure how we would do it. But so then we end up with something like this kind of carved piece of wood with a sort of stacked skin in the landscape of Yamhill County, which is a landscape I just adore. But again, just trying to find something there to serve in vernacular architecture, the nature of the landscape, wanting it to be a part of the earth. This is actually part of a scheme of a series of terraces. And so I think of this as a kind of extruded terrace that we carved up for these beautiful rooms to sit and drink wine and look at the landscape. Cannot be a bad thing. So any material, any media, this is an incredible project. This is the glass house that Doug then projected on, Doug Aiken. The idea on this piece, I'll go back. The idea on this piece was it's on this meadow looking out over the landscape, and I wanted the building to tie itself back to the landscape literally, so it's a kind of orthogonal helix with these three landscape courts that kind of bind it to the earth. But then the house is translucent, transparent, and opaque glass, because the owners are also big art collectors, so they need wall, but there's lots of views. And then I wanted it to kind of ambiguously reflect the landscape. So this thing kind of intertwines and reflects on itself, and that's a Mel Bachner piece, a very, very well-known artist that we worked with to incorporate his pieces into the house and some of these light shafts, and then Doug's work that you saw at the end. But I should maybe wrap up. Oh, one more house, just for fun. So this was, there's so much. This, I didn't do a very good job of editing. This is a house we did, and those of you who are from Oregon, it's a little different over here, but when you're from the Willamette Valley, light, well, there basically is no light. And, coniferous forests take light, they sort of suck light out of the world, right? I mean, they're magical places, but... So this was the first time I got to design a house in a deciduous forest. And it was incredible. And I went to this site when there was no leaves, and it was snow on the ground, and I thought if the building could just weave through that thing in some magical way, right? So we designed a structure of these steel tubes, the cantilever off the site kind of on the edge of a creek, and do that, and then get filled in with glass and wood panels. So it's, this is probably one of the most pure, it's an 1,800 square foot house, so it's tiny, so it can be more pure in some ways. But sort of clearest to that first sketch. But, it goes through, from that sketch to the end of the building is 4 years. It's an amazing cycle. I think that's what's also so interesting and challenging. When I did Pixar, I learned, Pixar hired us, they had no program, they had no idea what they needed, they just knew they wanted to grow, because Disney had just purchased them and they had to do a bunch of new movies. And we learned that animation takes about 4 years. And it goes through, and that's minimum if there's no problems, right? And it goes from like 2 or 3 people to 250 people when it's in full production. And if you do an art museum, it's about the exact same thing, except there's always problems, so it turns into 6, 7, or 8 years. But it's really that sense of time. I think that's what's also so important for me and us, is those concept models remind us along the way what we're serving, because it's such a collective act, this architecture business. And if everyone can try to focus on the idea itself and hold on to the ideas for dear life, as construction and economy and local conditions, like I said in Ohio, where no one wanted to build our building. We knew it was buildable, but no one wanted to build it. And so it just takes such fortitude. So those concepts are really what drive it. In the last 27 seconds, I'm going to blast through the show. So we brought together all of those bits and pieces into the Casework show. And my idea of how to show it was these toolboxes. This idea that these are our visual tools. These are not artifacts in themselves. So we then designed these toolboxes, made them in the basement of Allied Works. Crazy, crazy project. There they are, action shots. And they're about 3 feet high, some of these things. And they all have a kind of operation of the infinite, whether it's mirrors or or the way they move and swirl, and they gather together these concept models and sort of represent them. These are drawers that never close, things that keep opening and flipping and unfolding. This is a crazy box that keeps opening, and it's the negative, and it kind of represents the milling process. On and on. This is a peep show box that shows the house in the site, the Dutchess County house. So it's a kind of way of engaging these things in this space, held in these threshold frames that we developed, and I'll get to the end here because I'm over time. And there it is. All right. So it's really, and John's going to come up here. I'm 1 minute 57 seconds over. But you're going to come up. Oh, right.
Thank you, Brad. We have a little surprise for you. We are going to invite up one of our afternoon speakers, Mr. John Jay, to the stage to conduct a Q&A with Brad. John and Brad work together on a lot of collaborative projects, and we're excited to see what these two have to talk about.
Aren't we both grabbing a chair?
Yeah, no, we're going to sit on each other's lap. Well, I know a lot of you would like to sit up here, actually, instead of me and ask questions, so I'll be your surrogate and try to draw some additional information out of this man. I have a long-running history with this gentleman.
Wow.
I could take up the rest of the afternoon. Oh, hang on. Is it working? Hang on.
Okay, probably.
How's that?
Still not working?
So,
Yeah, it's working.
when Brad was one of the architects being considered for White and Kennedy, he was the last architect of the day. We had been through 6 presentations. We were exhausted. He was at 6 o'clock, I think it was, end of the day. And he had no models to show. And we just talked. And he took out a piece of paper, tissue paper, and drew in front of us. And that was it. And by 11 o'clock, Dan Wyden said, this is it. This is it. Fast forward a year or so ago, I'm bringing another opportunity to Brad. And the founder of the company, and this is kind of secret, we're not even supposed to talk about it yet because it's not public. And Brad had these models in his reception area.
Yeah, New York.
In New York. And I said, I think this is kind of a litmus test, because those who pass through this area, if they get it, Brad will sense it, and will turn the meeting into something else, The deal was done by the time we sat at the conference table. That's the truth. And this is a massive project, not a building, but a massive space. And the space, you had a great deal of museum work and residential work here today, which was spectacular. But quite frankly, Brad is very known for creating spaces to help creative people relate to each other, collaborate with each other, and really making creative space work for creative people. So Brad, you mentioned one example, Pixar. Obviously, Wyden and Kennedy is another example. How is it that you look at these spaces and really think about the relationship between creative people and how they work?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's more a sense of discovery. I have to add to your anecdote of Wyden and Kennedy. I can't remember what meeting it was, because I think we met a number of times. But one time they all came to my office, which was in a garage on Thurman Street in Portland. And again, I still didn't have much to show, but I had images of Donald Judd's workspace at Marfa. And I basically showed that to them, and I said, isn't this where we all want to work? In this incredibly beautiful workshop. It is where we all want to work. And it's not even just where creatives want to work. It's where everyone wants to work. I mean, it's sort of simple and sort of hard at the same time, but if you find those things to serve. And so with with White and Kennedy is a great conversation because they were in 8 different buildings. Dan wanted to bring everybody together, and the thing that keyed and flipped the whole thing was he said, I want to bring everyone together. We had all these crazy ways of, it's an existing building, and we were doing all these design moves of carving it up and doing all these things that were somewhat capricious and, very cool. But then he said, I want one room, and I kind of fought him on it. Yeah, he was right a bunch of times, pissed me off, actually. But I fought him on it, and then I started to say, what if we take all the seismic forces, that's the earthquake forces that you have to fix in an old building, and create just this one room. And then we kind of weave through it again. And it became that amazing space, which then became, and this is what's so exciting to me, the resonance of architecture. We're sitting in that building when it's not done, and I said, Dan, this space is bigger than the agency. This is going to be one of the most important rooms. And not because it's my architecture, I was just looking at this room. In Portland, it has become this internalized civic space, which none of us had really thought about. And it sort of got, sort of taken a life of its own. So I think that sense of common pursuit and the kind of spirit of things. Pixar is a very different company. Where we're working is very different. You're dealing with an entirely different culture. So trying to understand their culture and what are those things that are going to sort of help people identify that culture, bring that culture together, amplify that culture, and then serve the individuals who work there in a way. And there's just commonalities in how we are as humans. I think the biggest insight to workspace, and there's so much jargon and crazy business around workspace, mostly trying to sell products and things and services, is that we're people. And we love to sit and talk, we like to meet in small groups and large groups. We really cherish our individuality and our privacy. And if you just serve those natural ways that we convene, but then around a culture, and that's the challenging part. The project we're doing together is in Japan, and the learning that both you and I have had to do is tremendous, tremendous.
So I'll break the code and talk a little bit about the project. It's obviously in Japan.
In case you didn't get
keep that under your hat, though.
Yeah.
And these processes, these ideas that Brad's mentioning about collaboration and speaking to each other and meeting in individual groups and sharing, that's not common in Japan. And in particular, this company became very, very famous because of its own processes, and those processes were built on silos, where individual silos became centers of excellence, but they didn't cross over. And my job is to help now bring a certain evolution to that company and take it to the next stage. Mm-hmm. So what Brad is a partner in is creating the stage for all of us on marketing and creative and architecture and product design to help take our craft to the next stage. So that building is a stage in which we get to practice and hopefully learn how to work with each other better and be able to connect with the world better and elevate the company, elevate the culture.
And that I love what you're saying because it reminds me, one of the things we work really hard on at Allied Works too is the presence of the architecture. When the architecture stops, in art museums it's huge. You want to draw people, you want to create a place of memory, you want to open people up, open their spirit up to see new things, but you want it to be about the work in the end. And it's the same in workspace. You want to create this platform or stage to inspire. What's going to make a more creative company is if they're inspired, and they're inspired to come to work in a beautiful place, a beautiful, inspiring workspace. But then after that, it's about them, I always tell the museum people, I don't care what you do. Once it's not mine, it's yours. You can do anything you want. And this idea that architecture sets something in motion, it's not the answer. It's not this static thing, ideally, right? It's something that sets things in motion. And I think the thing we're working on, we all hope, will set change in motion in a
Well, the second part, once the building is finished, once the space is set, the real important part is the programming, the software. Brad has created the hardware with the software in mind, but the software. And I'll use a local reference. I'll use Ace Hotel as an example. Is it distinctive in its architecture? Has it created kind of a trend, an artisanal trend around the world? Yes, give him credit for that. Give Alex, the late Alex Calderwood, all the credit for that. But the magic of that brand, that company, is the software. Yeah. What happens there after the building is finished? What kind of curation? What kind of art? Who are the DJs? What kind of music? What's the dialogue? An example of that would be Palm Springs. Summertime, 120 degrees Fahrenheit, sold out every weekend. Mm-hmm. Sold out every weekend. Not because the rooms got bigger or the prices were lowered, maybe they were, but it's the programming. It's the kind of cultural programming that space allows to happen. So what I'm so appreciative is this space that Brad is building for us to allow the next stage, and that is the programming. Mm-hmm. And we hope for Brad to be a part of the programming.
And it's always the programming. That's my reference earlier that architecture is not always the answer. Architecture is rarely the answer, actually. And so we try to determine what to serve by serving the program. And a lot of times people don't know, though. That's the... So then you get, and this is the next level of involvement. The more you do this, you can help people understand that part of the architectural process is trying to discern who you are as an institution, right, is to help you understand that aspect of it, that the architecture can only do so much.
But the programming part, I have to admit, is probably more in my head. To share with you just how far back I'm starting, my starting point. Mm-hmm. If Brad has an idea like open walls that are open to the aisles, open to the street, in which everyone can see the work that we're creating together, that's revolutionary at this, in my company in Japan. So that idea of having a space where everyone can see the work is new. So that's how far back we're starting in terms of where we're trying to take the company. The other thing I want to just raise is that, and Brad, you of course the museum work is extraordinary, but there have been many times where you have asked an artist to join you in the early stages before the project even starts to help you think about the problem.
So much fun. What you realize, what's exciting in talking to various artists and different makers and different people in different disciplines is they have a concern, but it's almost always a concern that's in this shared realm, whether it's a perceptual, experiential. If someone's, Anne Hamilton's talking about how the body moves through space, right? And I'm talking how to create a building that brings the landscape down to a scale that a body can occupy it, and then she can take it and think about how the body then moves through that space. And like with Doug Aiken, talking about how this building kind of binds and reflects and diffuses into the landscape, and he spends a year filming that landscape, projecting it back on the building, and therefore disembodying the building and blurring the boundaries even more. That's what's been so exciting about working with the artist, is it's an extended conversation. And then again, back to this idea of disciplines, which I deeply believe in. The architecture is trying to do all those concepts. When Doug does it in film, it takes it 100 times farther, right? It just extends that conversation in another media through another discipline. And it's even better than a collaboration, because it isn't like I collaborated on his piece, he collaborated on my piece, but it's a sharing of ideas that somehow extend the impact into different and unknown ways, which is really, really
So
exciting.
As you were saying, it's more than just simply blurring the boundaries.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of blurring the boundaries in some ways. But it's a collective conversation in various disciplines. I really believe in experts. Because I get to work with experts, and it's unbelievably... When you can work with someone who is the best at what they do, engineer, someone who's building beautiful concrete formwork, whatever it is, it just totally multiplies the possibilities. It just extends the possibilities in such an enormous way. The creative possibilities when we work with these structural engineers from Germany that we worked with on the building of Columbus. We had to search for a partner, and then you find someone, you realize, oh my God, we can do this, they can get it. And then it goes...
So I'm going to ask, I know everyone wants to go to lunch, so I'm going to ask one final question here, and this is about, I'm proud to say that I've been to Bend more times than you have been.
Recently, maybe.
Yeah. And that the only problem is I only know these 3 square blocks around here. I've never ventured beyond this area. But Brad, you were really struck. We talked last night. You were really struck by this city and what has changed, and you kept talking at dinner about the possibilities.
Yeah.
That's a little bit what I'm going to talk about later,
Yeah.
but you're going to be better at it. So why don't you share with this audience what you see as some of the possibilities?
If you look, this is really so new, but so I'm still trying to understand it. But I mean, I was always drawn to Bend. When I was in university and coming over here, we were drawn to the landscape. And again, like the speaker before me, when I smelled the junipers, when I got to Sisters and smelled the junipers, oh my God, it's just such an amazing thing. But everyone was drawn to the landscape here. I mean, a lot of you are probably here because of that. But it's becoming more. The people that are coming here, somehow inspired by this landscape, the newness of this place as a real, emerging city, the youth of this place, I'm just lit up. It's really, really, really exciting. And there's something about it not being Portland, with all the encumbrances that Portland, the last 10 years, in some ways have been the heyday of Portland, but in some ways have not been good to Portland. Rendering a city that's so self-conscious about who it is in some way that it's sort of the dog chasing its tail. Whereas here, it's all new. I mean, this is it. There's nowhere to go but up. You just feel it. And the fact that this conference is happening here is amazing. So, anyway, it's exciting to re-engage, really exciting to re-engage.
Well, Brad, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, John.